Don't take this the wrong way. I just don't date men who are still building. She said that in booth 4 of the most expensive restaurant in the city. Then she dropped a 20 on the table and walked out on him. He drove a dented sedan older than his daughter to every first date. His bank account had 8 figures. His heart had one rule: no gold diggers anywhere near his little girl. That same morning, he'd walked into a downtown tower in a faded flannel shirt, and the man at the front desk asked him very politely for some identification. Emery Dunbar owned that tower. He owned the freight company that hauled its steel, the logistics firm that routed its trucks, and the ground floor lease under that restaurant. He thought the broke dad routine was foolproof. It was until the waitress who bought him a coffee turned out to be the one person in this city who could take every single thing away from him. Quick thing before we go further. If you've ever had somebody decide what you were worth in under 2 seconds, tap that like button. It's the whole reason stories like this one get seen. Okay, back to booth 4. 7:28 on a Friday night, and Emery Dunbar was already 3 minutes into being the only man in the room sitting alone. Aurelia did not have a bad table. That was the point of Aurelia. But booth 4 sat in the seam between the bar light and the dining room light in a soft pocket of shadow, and a man could sit there for an hour without anyone deciding what he was. He turned his water glass a quarter turn. The ice shifted and cracked, and in that hush, that expensive upholstered hush, it sounded like someone stepping on a branch. There was a coaster on the table. Pressed pulpboard, cream-colored with a small line of type running along the bottom edge, Fulton Provisions Co. He read it. Then he read it again. Then he turned it face down and set his glass on top of it, and he did not look at it for the rest of the night. 6 days earlier, his daughter had said something to him over a bowl of cereal, and he hadn't slept right since. Dad, at school everybody's mom is a person. Mine is a maybe. Eat your cereal, Win. That was the whole conversation. She went back to her cartoon. He stood at the counter with a spatula in his hand and forgot what he was doing with it. 6 years old. 6 years old, and she'd already worked out the difference between a person and a maybe. That was why he was here. Not because he wanted this. Not because he thought a woman in a blazer was going to fix anything, but because a splinter had gone into his chest at a kitchen counter, and this ridiculous performance in a borrowed shirt was the only pair of tweezers he had. His phone said 7:31. She was late. Her name was Sloane, and she was very good at arriving. She came down the aisle between the tables the way people do when they've already decided how the night ends, and she put out her hand before he'd finished standing up. Her eyes did the thing. He'd learned to watch for the thing. It took less than 2 seconds. The frayed cuff, the boots that had been resold twice, the wrist with nothing on it. 10 degrees. That's what it cost him. The temperature in her face dropped 10 degrees before she'd even sat down. Sorry I'm late. The financial district was a parking lot. No trouble. My car took some convincing. Your car. She's got opinions in the cold. She ordered a Cabernet without opening the list. He asked for tap water. That was the moment he could see it happen, the small final click of a door closing somewhere behind her eyes. She folded her hands. Your profile said logistics. It did. And that's what? Dispatch routes, mostly. It wasn't a lie. He managed the people who managed the routes, 3,000 trucks worth of routes. But she didn't ask the second question, and he'd stopped volunteering the second question a long time ago. She looked at the door, then back at him. Don't take this the wrong way. I just don't date men who are still building. That's fair. She blinked. He wasn't supposed to say that's fair. He was supposed to argue or wilt or make a joke about how everyone starts somewhere. I'm not cruel. I'm just tired of being someone's next chapter. And then she was up and the bag was on her shoulder, and a 20 was lying on the white cloth like something dropped out of a window. Her heels went out across the hardwood in a rhythm he could have set a watch to. Here's what nobody tells you about running an experiment on human beings. It works. And it still hurts. She was the third that month. The first one had asked in the first 10 minutes what the lease on his apartment ran, and then done arithmetic in her face where he could watch it. The second had converted him to a friend somewhere between the appetizer and the entree so smoothly he almost admired it. And the third one had picked up the check. "I've got it." Really? There's no shame in that. That one landed harder than the 20. Kindness aimed at a man who doesn't need it is still a verdict. 4 hours earlier, in a windowless office at the back of that same restaurant, a man named Petrov had watched a woman in a charcoal suit sit down across from him without being invited. She didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. That was the first thing people got wrong about her, and usually the last thing they got wrong about her. 41 bottles. I won't ask why. I'll ask you to leave the keys where your hands are. That was it. 40 seconds start to finish. He was in the alley with a box before the dinner service opened, which left Aurelia one manager short on a Friday in October with a full book. Simone Baptiste stood in the empty office for a moment with her hand flat on the desk. Then she took off the blazer, hung it on the back of the door, and walked into the kitchen, where a station cook took one look at her face and handed her an apron without being asked. She tied it behind her back the way you tie something you've tied 10,000 times. 2 loops, 1 pull, no looking. The sous chef stared. I washed dishes in that room at 19. The sink hasn't moved. She owned 22 restaurants on 3 continents. She had a corporate floor with a view that made investors go quiet. And on that particular Friday, she carried water pitchers for 4 straight hours, because the thing about building something from a dish pit is that your hands never really believe you left. She had been watching Booth 4 since 7. Not for any reason she could have defended. He'd come in early. Nobody comes in early to Aurelia. They come in arriving. And he'd sat down and put his phone face down and just waited like a man in a bus station. Then the woman came. Then the woman left. And he didn't do any of the things men do in that chair. He didn't wave anyone over. He didn't get loud. He didn't take out his phone and start performing a busy life for the room. He just sat there with his hand around a glass of water, looking at nothing. Something in her chest went hot and sideways on his behalf, and before she'd decided to do it, she was cutting a slice of the kitchen's reserved cherry pie and pouring a coffee she had no business pouring. She set both down in front of him right on top of the 20. On the house. "You've got the face of a man who just walked away from a car crash he paid for." He looked up. Later, both of them would try to work out what happened in that second, and neither of them would manage it. There was no lightning, nobody's hands shook. It was smaller and much worse than that. 2 people who spent every day being looked at accidentally looked at each other instead. Pity pie. No. This is the rent is fake and so is she pie. Eat it. He laughed, a real one, low and surprised, like something he'd misplaced and found in a coat pocket. "You saw all that? I've got 7 tables. Yours had the best writing." He picked up the fork. She should have gone. There were 7 tables. Instead, she stood there with a damp cloth in her hand, wiping down a side of the booth that was already clean. "You didn't argue with her?" she said. "What would I argue with? Most men argue." She wanted a man with a portfolio. "I've got a car with opinions." She almost let it go at that. She didn't. "Can I say something rude?" "Please." "You didn't look surprised. You looked like you were checking a box." And that was the moment the whole architecture of the evening tilted because he put the fork down. Here's what nobody believes. I never had to build the disguise. People hand it to me at the door. I just stopped correcting them. She didn't answer right away. She stood there with the cloth in her fist and felt something enormous go past her in the dark. Then she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down in the middle of a Friday service in an apron on the clock, and she put her back against the wall the way she always did in every restaurant, in every city, without ever once thinking about why. "I'm Emery. Simone. You've got a rule, don't you?" About customers. Several. Break one for me.
Can I tell you the one I don't break?
I don't look people up. Everyone I've ever looked up turned into a file. He turned that over. That sounds like it cost you something. It cost me 2 friends and a fiancé. Eat your pie, Emery. He stayed another hour. He drank the coffee. He read the room the way people do when they don't want to leave a place yet and can't say so. When she finally came back through to clear booth 4, he was gone. Under the plate, there was a 50 for a slice of pie she had given him for free, and under the 50, there was a paper napkin. Neat handwriting. Square, deliberate letters. The kind that come from filling out forms for a living. If you ever want coffee, you don't have to pour yourself 5550198. She stood there in the emptying dining room holding a paper napkin from a man who couldn't afford the pie he'd overpaid for. She should have thrown it away. She folded it in half, and then in half again, and put it in the pocket of her apron. 9 the next morning, on the 60th floor of a building with his name on the deed, Emery Dunbar was wearing $4,000 of charcoal wool and losing. Constance Thorne did not look like a problem. That was the entire design of her. 54 silver bob reading glasses. She actually needed a folder she never opened because she didn't have to. She'd flown in from a fund that owned pieces of 11 ports, and she'd started the meeting by asking about his daughter. Winnie's still at Braden Day, isn't she? Tell them to recheck the peanut labels. They get lazy in spring. Nobody at that table knew how she knew that. Emery knew what it meant, which was worse. The land under the Fulton Strip, 9 buildings, a rail spur, and every truck bay his eastern routes depended on, sat on a ground lease that had been renewing quietly for 19 years. It did not renew quietly this time. 58 days. That's what the letter said. 58 days to satisfy the note or surrender the parcel. His lawyer leaned in with his hand flat over the page the way you cover a card. The note is personally guaranteed, Emery. Fulton goes, they don't come for the company. They come for the house Winnie sleeps in. A man who inherits money learns that money is weather. A man who builds it learns that money is a rope and that there is always someone standing on the other end of it being pleasant. Thorne took her glasses off. She folded them. She smiled at him with what looked from any angle exactly like affection. I'm not here to take anything, Mr. Dunbar. I'm handing you a soft landing. I just need you to notice how short the runway is, and if I fix it myself, then I'll congratulate you. Sincerely. I like watching people build things. She stood, shook every hand at the table, remembered the paralegal's name, and left. It took him 4 minutes after the door closed to realize she'd never once said what she was actually buying. Down in the warehouse that afternoon, his sister Yvette read the term sheet standing up with a clipboard under her arm and 40 pallets waiting. She had run that floor for 11 years. She was the only person alive who still called him by the name he'd had before he had a company. This is a floor, not an offer. I know. You've got 58 days and a house on the line, MM. You want to tell me what you did last night? I ate pie. She went back to her pallets. He was in the cab of a rig with a clipboard on his knee when his phone buzzed against the seat. A number he didn't have saved. Strict policy against dating customers. You barely qualified. Thursday. He read it 4 times. Then he sat in a parked truck in a cold warehouse in the middle of the worst month of his professional life and grinned at a phone like an idiot. He had 58 days. He was about to spend the best of them lying to the one person who wasn't lying to him. At least, that's what he thought. Thursday, 6 o'clock, and 2 people in 2 different parts of the city were putting on a costume. In a glass apartment 40 floors above the river, Emery Dunbar took a watch off his wrist and set it in a drawer. He put on a flannel shirt with a cuff that had gone soft from washing. He kissed his daughter on the forehead while she was arguing with a babysitter about bedtime, and he took the freight elevator down, not the residence elevator, the freight one, so that he could walk out past the loading bay to a sedan parked 2 blocks away with a crease in the passenger door. Across town, a woman stood in a closet the size of most apartments and pushed past everything in it. Not the silk, not the wool. Down at the end, on a wooden hanger, a plain black cotton dress she'd bought a decade ago in an airport. Denim jacket, canvas sneakers. She wiped off the makeup that cost more per ounce than saffron and put on a drugstore mascara. She looked in the mirror and saw a tired woman who worked doubles. Downstairs in the garage, her driver was standing beside the car with the door already open. Royce had done 11 years in the service and 9 with her, and in 9 years, he had never once asked a question that wasn't about a route. Rail district, drop me 3 blocks out. He looked at her in the mirror. A second longer than he needed to. Then he started the car. La Bracita was a shack. That was being generous. It was a converted trailer with a corrugated roof bolted onto the side of it, sitting on a gravel lot between a rail yard and a tire shop, lit by one buzzing lamp and a string of Christmas lights that had been up since a Christmas nobody remembered. It smelled like pork fat, cumin, and wood smoke, and when Simone Baptiste got out of a car 3 blocks away and walked toward it, that smell hit her in the chest like a hand. She owned 22 restaurants. She had a chef in Copenhagen with 2 stars and a mortgage-sized ego. And she stood on that gravel for a second with her eyes closed, like someone hearing a song from their childhood in a grocery store. He was waiting by the order window. When he saw her, his whole face opened. "You came." I said I would. People say a lot of things. Not me. I'm terrifyingly consistent. They ordered a dozen tacos and 2 glass-bottle sodas and sat at a folding table with one leg shimmed by a folded matchbook. Paper plates okay? Emery. I stare at white porcelain all day. Paper plates are a vacation. And for 40 minutes, it was the easiest thing either of them had done in years. Nobody pitched anything. Nobody wanted an introduction, a term sheet, a table on a Saturday, a job for a nephew. He asked what her worst shift had been. She told him about a New Year's Eve with a walk-in freezer that died at 9 p.m., and she caught herself half a sentence before saying, "And I flew in from Lisbon that morning and turned it into, and I'd been up since 4. That was the first one. She noticed how easy it was. She noticed, and she did it again anyway. Then the door at the back of the trailer banged open, and a heavy-set man came out with a crate of limes on his hip. He looked at their table. He stopped walking. "Hey, hey!" Emery's stomach dropped through the gravel. Reuben Paz had run a corporate kitchen for Dunbar Freight for 6 years before Emery had personally financed him out of it and into this trailer. Reuben Paz had shaken his hand at a ribbon cutting. Reuben Paz was, at that moment, the single most dangerous human being in the state. He set the limes down and came over, wiping his hands. 41 days, hermano. That's what the letter says. Whole Fulton Strip got one. Every unit. I got a guy telling me to look at spaces out by the airport. Reuben, you know this man fixed my zoning. Nobody would return my calls. Nobody. He fixed my zoning. He fixed your zoning. I helped with a permit. Once. Years ago. And Reuben, who was many things but was not slow, looked at the intensity in Emery's face and the denim jacket on the woman across from him and the frayed cuff on a man he had watched sign an 8-figure note, and something behind his eyes went, ah. Permits, yes, terrible things permits. Anyway, extra churros. On me, nobody argue. He went. Emery took a very long drink of his soda. Simone let it go. She let it go the way you let go of a thread on a sweater with your fingers still on it. They ate. The night got cold in the way October nights do all at once between one sentence and the next. She asked about his daughter and he changed. 6 going on 40. Gap in her front teeth she can whistle through. Argues like a paralegal. And her mom, she didn't leave me. People leave people. That happens. She left a 6-year-old. In a text. with an emoji at the end. Emery, I'm not asking for the face. You're not getting the face. You're getting me being angry on a gravel lot. That's better. A gust came through the lot, then the flat, cold kind that comes off a rail yard with nothing to stop it, and it took her bag off the corner of the table and put half of it on the ground. They both went down after it. Lip balm, a pen, keys, receipts, and a paper napkin folded in quarters gone soft at the creases. He picked it up. He brushed the grit off it with his thumb. He handed it back to her without looking at it. She took it. She looked at the handwriting on it, square, deliberate, the letters of a man who fills out forms for a living, and then she looked up at him, and he was already saying something about the churros. He didn't recognize it. He didn't recognize his own handwriting because it had never occurred to him that anybody had kept it. She put it back in her bag. 2:11 in the morning, 11 days later, in the fluorescent lobby of an urgent care on 9th, Winnie Dunbar had a fever of 103, and she was asleep on her father's shoulder with her fist closed in his collar, and the line to the pharmacy window was 4 people long. Simone was holding his jacket. She'd been at the restaurant when he called, and she had not asked a single question, and she had been in the passenger seat of a dented sedan 11 minutes later. The woman behind the glass swiped his card, then she swiped it again. Then she turned it over and looked at it and typed something. It's just flagged, sir. It happens. Flagged. The system does that sometimes. Unusual activity. You can call the number on the back. Unusual activity. An account with a very large number in it, spending $40 in a low-income zip code at 2 in the morning. The system had done exactly what it was built to do, and there was nobody in that room to be angry at, and that is the specific flavor of it. There's never anybody in the room. He reached into his coat. The encrypted phone was in the inside pocket. 2 buttons. A man in a building somewhere whose entire job was to make this stop happening within 90 seconds. He got his hand on it. Then he looked at Simone, standing there holding his jacket over her arm at 2 in the morning for a man she believed made $41,000 a year, and he put the phone back in his pocket. He put it back. She stepped up to the window and counted out $60 in cash, in tens the way you count money you've carried in an apron. Don't. I'm not doing anything. I'm buying a 6-year-old some ibuprofen and going home. He had 11 million liquid dollars in an account he couldn't touch. That was the night the costume stopped being a game. The park was Simone's idea, sort of. She'd said, I want to meet her on a Tuesday, and then not brought it up again for 4 days, which is its own kind of asking. Sunday afternoon, late October, and the wind had teeth. Emery was sitting on a bench tying a shoelace on a small person in a yellow puffer coat, and when he saw Simone coming up the path, he stood too fast and knocked his own knee into the bench. Hi. Win. This is Simone. The kid looked up. There is no interrogation on this earth like a 6-year-old deciding about you. No blinking, no small talk. Just an enormous silent audit conducted by someone whose shoes you just watched get tied. Dad says you feed people. Simone crouched down so they were level. I do. And if you're lucky, I bring pie. Do you like him? Say it fast so I know it's true. Okay, Rubes, win, that's yes. Winnie considered this. Then she held out a hand that was slightly sticky. Come see the ducks. They're extremely aggressive today. They were, in fact, extremely aggressive. There was bread. There was a plastic slide that Simone Baptiste, worth $3.1 billion, went down twice. There was a long negotiation about whether a stick could be considered a pet. And somewhere in the middle of it, a woman walking a terrier slowed down beside the bench and smiled at the 2 of them and the kid. Oh, are you with her tonight, or she's mine? The woman said of course and kept walking and probably forgot it inside a block. Simone watched Emery's jaw for 3 seconds afterward and didn't say anything because there wasn't anything, because nothing had happened. That's how it works. Nothing happens and then nothing happens again, and a man learns to carry his daughter's birth certificate in the glove box. At 5, the light went gold and long, and Winnie fell asleep against the car door on the way back. They stood on the sidewalk under a street lamp that flickered on while they were standing there. She loved you. She interrogated me. That's how you'd know. Emery, there's something Her phone went off in her pocket. She ignored it. Then his went off in his coat, not the everyday one, the other one with the hard, sharp ring, and he actually flinched.
I have to, that's my supervisor if I don't.
I have to go anyway. Dinner rush. Two of the wealthiest people in the city stood on a cracked sidewalk, lying to each other about bosses who did not exist. Later in the back of the car, Simone put her hand in her coat pocket looking for her phone and found a piece of paper folded into a small, tight square. Crayon, 3 figures, a tall one, a small one. And a woman with hair and an apron and no face, just the outline, empty. Oh. Constance Thorne came to the warehouse on a Thursday. She came alone, which was the frightening part. No folder, no associate, no car idling. She parked in the gravel lot like a customer and waited by the roll-up door while a forklift finished a pass. You've got a good floor. Clean racking. I can always tell in the first 10 seconds. Miss Thorne, I'll say the unkind thing once and then never again. She turned and looked at him, not cruelly. That was what he couldn't get past afterward. There was nothing in her face but a kind of tired accuracy. You are lying to a woman who is being very good to your child. Whatever you think that makes me, it doesn't make you the honest one. Are we done? We're done. The offer's open 11 more days. She got in her car and drove out slowly over the gravel, indicating at an empty exit. He turned the offer down that afternoon. And this is what turning it down cost him, because it always costs something, and the ledger doesn't care what your reasons were. Route 14 came off the board on Monday. 12 stops, 6 accounts, 1 trailer. And on Wednesday afternoon, Emery Dunbar sat in his sister's office and signed a separation letter for a driver with 14 years en route, a man who had been at his wedding and then walked out to the lot and told him himself face to face. Because there is no version of that you get to do by email. The man shook his hand. That was the worst part. He shook his hand. Here is the part where Simone Baptiste stopped being lied to and started being wrong. It started with a phone call at 11:40 on a Tuesday night. He'd told her he was on nights that week. Yard shift loading 11 to 7. She called anyway because she wanted to hear him complain about it. He picked up on the second ring. And there was no yard, no compressors, no reversing alarms, no diesel idle, no radio chatter, but none of the enormous mechanical breathing that a freight yard makes at midnight. There were dishes. A dishwasher door closing, and very faintly a child's voice asking for water. You busy slow night, real slow. She said something warm and hung up and sat in her kitchen with the phone in her hand for a long time. The second thing she did 2 days later was drive to the corner where he always dropped her off, and then keep driving 1 block further to the address where she always dropped him. It was a subway entrance. Not a building with an entrance near it. An entrance, a staircase into the ground, a rail, a trash can, and a shuttered newsstand. There was no apartment. There had never been an apartment. The third thing she did she is not proud of. She parked across from the glass tower 2 blocks from where he always walked at 9 on a Friday, and she waited. And she watched Emery Dunbar walk past the main doors of that building without slowing down, go around the corner to a service entrance and put a code into a keypad. The door opened. A woman opened it, 40s, beautiful coat, the kind with a real collar. She said something, and he laughed and put his hand on her shoulder, and the door closed behind them both. You have another door. She sat in that car for 11 minutes. She was very calm. That was the terrible part. She was extremely professionally calm, the way she was calm in rooms where people lost their companies. And every fact she had lined up like tin cans and knocked them all down with the wrong stone. The night shifts that weren't shifts. The address that wasn't an address. the wife who left in a text with an emoji at the end. A story so specific, so unarguable, so perfectly designed to make a woman stop asking questions. She didn't think he's rich. She thought he has a family. She gave him one chance. She has always been very clear with herself about that. She gave him exactly one. Sidewalk outside her building, rain that couldn't commit. One question. I need you to understand it's the only one. Okay? Is there someone else in that building? 3 seconds, that's what he had. 3 seconds and a lifetime of practice at not correcting people. No, it's a friend's place. I crashed there when Wynn's at my sister's. And she nodded. That's all. She nodded slowly, twice the way you do when a number comes back from an audit and confirms the thing you already knew. She reached into her bag and took out a paper napkin, soft at the folds, and held it out to him. He didn't take it. She opened her fingers and let it fall, and it landed in the gutter and went dark and heavy in about a second and a half. Okay. Okay, Emery. Then she went inside. 12 days. That's what the second letter said, and Ruben Paz was holding it up in the doorway of his trailer with grease on his knuckles, laughing the way people laugh when the alternative is worse. Emery had come to La Bracita to find her. He'd come to say the thing on the gravel where they'd sat because he'd decided somewhere around 4 in the morning that he was going to say it, all of it, and let it land however it landed. She wasn't there. 12 days, man. 12. Hey, you know a guy who knows a guy, right? Emery took the letter. He read the header. He read the return address. It was his own company's mailroom stamp. The list had gone out of his building under his signature authority, drafted by a real estate team on the 40th floor doing exactly what he'd told them to do 6 weeks earlier: clear the parcel, clean the rent roll, make the asset look tidy for a lender. 9 tenants. One of them was a man who'd handed him free churros. Ruben. Yeah, I know a guy. What happened next took 22 hours, and it was for a very short while the best thing either of them had ever done. She came back for Ruben. Not for Emery, she made that extremely clear at the time, and she meant it. She came back because a man she'd eaten tacos with was going to lose a trailer he'd mortgaged his sister's house for, and Simone Baptiste has never in her life been able to walk past that. She called a lawyer. He called a routing coordinator. She knew someone on the lessor's side. He knew how the parcel schedule was actually built, which nobody outside the freight business does. 22 hours of 2 people using enormous real power on a very small problem while both of them pretended it was luck. How do you know a commercial lease attorney? How do you know a parcel schedule? Trucks, restaurants. And at 11 o'clock the next night, they stood on that gravel lot, with the string lights buzzing and Ruben crying into a dish towel behind them, sitting on the hood of a dented sedan, splitting 1 glass bottle of orange soda. We just saved a taco stand. We just saved a taco stand. That was the highest point, right there. Remember it? Because the fall starts in the next sentence. To save that lease, Simone had to give a name. You cannot call a lessor's counsel at 9 p.m. and move a termination notice as a concerned member of the public. She had to say who she was. She said it once on a recorded line to a paralegal in an office that had 4 other clients. By 9 the next morning, Sterling Meridian Infrastructure knew that Baptiste Hospitality Group had been sniffing around a parcel in the Fulton corridor. And at 9:40, Constance Thorne, who had been unfailingly patient for 58 days, did something entirely lawful, extremely quiet, and completely fatal. She called for a revaluation of the note. Not a threat, not a demand. A single form filed with a servicer requesting current market reassessment of the collateral, which any holder of that paper had every right to do. Emery read it standing in his kitchen at 7 in the morning with a bowl of cereal going soft on the counter behind him, and he did not understand it because the sentence at the bottom didn't make sense. As holder. As holder. Nothing in that letter was a threat. That's what made it one. Her lie saved a taco stand, and it cost him everything else. Winnie found out on a Thursday standing in a hallway in socks. He was on the phone in the kitchen. He wasn't careful because he'd stopped believing anyone in that apartment was listening, which is the single stupidest assumption a parent can make. She thinks I'm in dispatch. Yes, still. Grant, I know. He turned around and she was in the doorway. You told her you're in dispatch? When you lied to her. It's complicated and Ah! You told me lying is the only thing we don't do. You said it's the only one, Daddy. 6 years old, bare feet. Absolutely correct. She went into her room and shut the door. Not slammed, shut, which was worse. He sat down on the hallway floor with his back against the wall and stayed there for a while. 1 in the morning, rain finally committing. He drove to Aurelia. He didn't park. He pulled into the loading zone across the street and sat with the wipers going and looked through the glass at a dining room with the lights down. Booth 4 was empty. Chairs up on the table. Somebody had left a single work light on over the bar. He didn't go in. He sat there for maybe 4 minutes. Then he pulled out and drove home. Yvette found him in the warehouse at 1 the next night, sitting on a pallet jack in a building he owned, doing nothing at all. She didn't sit down. She didn't put her hand on his shoulder. She has never once in her life done that. The Fulton file's on your desk, I know. You're gonna look at it? Not tonight. And his sister, who had said maybe 900 words to him that entire year, most of them about pallets, set down her clipboard. You didn't hide the money to find someone real, MM. You hid it so you'd never have to find out if you're enough without it. She picked the clipboard back up and walked out onto the floor and started counting, racking because there were 40 pallets waiting and the freight does not care. He didn't answer her. There was no answer. That was the point of the sentence. 3 days. That's what the revaluation notice gave him before the servicer's clock started, and Simone Baptiste didn't know that because Simone Baptiste was sitting in front of a laptop at 11 at night with her hands flat on either side of it, not typing. The Fulton file had come across her desk that afternoon in the ordinary way. Her people wanted the corner lot for a second flagship. Standard diligence, standard package, and on page 4 the ownership entity. Dunbar Freight and Holdings. She had told herself for 11 days that she was done. She'd told Royce. She'd told her second-in-command to reassign the parcel. She'd been extremely convincing. Her cursor sat blinking in a search field. Everyone I look up turns into a file. She typed his name, and there he was. 5th result. A trade publication 4 years old, a photograph from a ribbon cutting outside a taco trailer in a gravel lot, a man in a suit shaking hands with a heavyset guy in an apron. Founder, chief executive, 40 million in assets. Custody of 1 minor child, no wife. No other family, no other door. There had never been another door. Oh, you idiot. She didn't cry. She sat back in her chair in the dark and put her hand over her mouth for a second, and then she got up and she went downstairs and she got in the car. Home, Royce. He didn't start the engine. She looked up. He was watching her in the mirror. 9 years, no questions, not one. And he had both hands on the wheel and the key not turned. 4 seconds. Then she laughed once without any humor in it at all and put her face in her hands. Fine. She opened the laptop again right there in the back seat. Move the Dunbar meeting to Tuesday. And don't tell them I'm coming. The engine started. Tuesday, 9 a.m., 60th floor. Emery sat at the head of a black marble table in a navy suit with a watch on his wrist, 4 lawyers to his left, a city out the window rendered small enough to hold. This was the version of him that had built all of it. Hard jaw, flat voice, no flannel anywhere in the building. His counsel leaned in. Baptiste is here. Their CEO's handling it personally. She's supposed to be ruthless. Then let her be ruthless. The price is the price. The doors opened. She was in white, not a soft white, a structural one, the kind of suit that ends conversations. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked like a decision. Two associates came in behind her, and neither of them sat until she did. Emery stood up so fast his chair went back into the wall. Simone. Something moved through that room like a pressure change. 12 people understood at exactly the same moment that they were about to be somewhere they had no business being. Clear the room. Miss Baptiste, we haven't even opened. Out. Please. 11 seconds. That's how long it took. The door shut with the particular heavy click that expensive doors make. And then two of the wealthiest people in the city stood at opposite ends of 40 feet of marble with absolutely nothing left to hide behind. She spoke first. She had decided in the elevator that she would. I stood in a pharmacy line at 2 in the morning and paid for your daughter's medicine with cash I earned. Simone, and you let me. There was a whole speech in him. He'd been writing it for 11 days. The ex-wife, the settlement, the interviews disguised as dates, the arithmetic he'd watched happen in women's faces. All of it true. All of it beside the point. He didn't say any of it. I didn't lie about what I own. I lied because I've spent my whole life being told what I'm worth by people who never once asked. She crossed the room. She walked the whole length of that table slowly in a white suit, past 4 empty chairs. And she took something out of her jacket pocket and set it down on top of a 200-page contract. A paper napkin. Warped from a gutter, dried stiff, gone brown along one fold, square, deliberate handwriting still just legible. If you ever want coffee, you don't have to pour yourself. You kept it. I went back for it. In the rain, which I would appreciate you never mentioning again. Then she pulled out the chair beside him and sat down, with her back to the door. She didn't notice she'd done it. He didn't know what it meant. Nobody in that room said one word about it, and it was the single loudest thing that happened all morning. The bombshell didn't come in that room. It came at 11 that night, in a warehouse office with a space heater and a ventilation fan from a corporate attorney named Grant Ozawa, who had driven 40 minutes with a box on his passenger seat. He put 4 pages on the desk and stood back from them. You want to sit down? I'm fine. Emery, sit down. The fan turned. Somewhere out on the floor, a forklift finished a pass and shut off, and then there was nothing in that building making any sound at all. Your note, the bank paper, the one with your personal guarantee on it. What about it? It was sold in February. Sold to who? Sterling Meridian. Through a holding entity in Delaware, then a second one. Emery, she has been your creditor for 6 months. Every meeting where you thought you were negotiating, every time you turned her down, every time you sat across from her and felt good about saying no. You were asking your own lender for permission. I put both hands flat on the desk. 58 days. The peanut labels. I like watching people build things. The soft landing offered patiently again and again by a woman who already owned the floor he was standing on and simply preferred that he step off it voluntarily. She never wanted Fulton. No, Grant turned the last page around. She's got 11 parcels around the rail spur, bought quietly over 3 years through 6 entities. Fulton's the last one. She's not buying a building. She's closing a corridor. And then Grant Ozawa, who had billed him 400 hours and never once looked pleased about any of them, smiled. Here's the thing about doing it through 2 shells. He put his finger on a clause. When that note changed hands, they were required to give written notice to the guarantor. To you. Personally. Within 30 days. And they didn't. The hallway outside the servicer's office Thursday morning. Gray carpet, 2 elevators. It took 11 minutes inside that room and no voices were raised in it. Defective notice doesn't need a raised voice. It needs a date on a page. Constance Thorne came out, putting her glasses into a case. "You've made this personal." "No, ma'am. I've made it mine." "Then I'll see you at the filing." The elevator came. She got in it. She pressed the button for the lobby and stood facing forward with her hands folded, and the doors closed on a woman who had lost 11 parcels worth of leverage and did not appear to be having any feelings about it whatsoever. That was all of it. That was the whole scene. 3 things closed in the following 6 weeks, and none of them took very long. The note got renegotiated. Not forgiven. Nobody forgives anything. Defective notice bought 11 months, and 11 months was all he'd ever actually needed. The Fulton ground lease went to Baptiste Hospitality Group, who paid meaningfully less for it than Sterling Meridian had offered. Simone knew that. Emery knew that. Both of their finance teams put it in writing that they were unhappy about it, and both of them signed anyway. And on the first Monday in December, Route 14 ran again. 12 stops, 6 accounts, 1 trailer, and a driver with 14 years en route who shook Emery's hand a second time and said absolutely nothing about the first time. La Bracita is still there. There is a hand-painted sign on the side of it now that says, "As seen in," and then nothing because Reuben never finished it. The drawing came back in a truck lot in December at 4 in the afternoon when the light goes copper and quits early. Simone was there for a walkthrough, in a white coat and boots that were not built for gravel, and she was halfway through a conversation about a loading dock when she felt a tug at her sleeve. Winnie Dunbar, yellow puffer coat, holding a piece of paper with both hands the way you carry something full. Her father was 40 feet away and had the sense to stay there. "This is yours. It's the same one. I fixed it." Simone crouched down on the gravel in a coat that cost more than the forklift behind her and unfolded it. 3 figures, a tall one, a small one, and a woman with hair and an apron. And a face. Eyes, a nose, and a mouth turned up at one corner, drawn hard enough in one place that the crayon had gone through the paper. I couldn't do it before. I didn't know what she looked like when she wasn't pretending. Simone Baptiste, who fires vice presidents by first name, who has never once cried in a building she owns, sat down on the gravel. She didn't say anything. There wasn't anything. It was a 6-year-old sentence, and it was better than any of the ones the adults had managed all year. Aurelia on a Tuesday at 7:28 in the evening. Same booth, same seam of shadow between the bar light and the dining room light. Same soft pocket where a person can sit for an hour without anybody deciding what they are. But this time, she's the one who slides in first. And she takes the outside seat. Back to the room. Back to the door. She doesn't notice. She's never once noticed. And he's the one standing there in a flannel shirt with a pot of coffee he took off the station himself because the closer was slammed and old habits are old habits. He pours. She watches him pour. There's a coaster on the table. Creamboard small line of type along the bottom edge. Fulton Provisions Co. He picks it up, turns it face up, and slides it across the cloth to her like a term sheet. Your building. Our building. Which your people are still overcharging me for. Take it up with dispatch. Don't. And they sit there. A woman who washed dishes in that room at 19, and a man who owns the ground it stands on. Over 1 cup of coffee and a slice of pie, neither of them is going to finish. Can I say the thing I worked out? In the car the night I looked you up? Go ahead. Anyone can love what you have. Only the right person will love you before they know what that is. He doesn't answer that. He just picks up the pot and tops up a cup that didn't need it because it gives him somewhere to put his hands. If this one got you the disguise, the napkin, the kid with the crayon, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about people who had to lose the armor before anybody could find them underneath it. But here's what I actually want to know. There's a moment on a wet sidewalk where she asks him one question. One, and gives him 3 seconds to answer it. Would you have told her the truth right there? Or would you have done exactly what he did? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.